was a Bill Belichick line I think you used there. On to North Carolina. Yeah, North Carolina. You know, in a lot of ways, very similar team. Young, athletic, a lot of very good athletes. I think Larry does a great job. Followed his career. Did a great job at Southern Miss and do a lot of things similar offensively. You know, again, I think they're playing a lot of young players and very difficult to defend offensively. They play very fast, probably the fastest offense in terms of tempo that we'll see this year. Marquise Williams, the quarterback, you know, leads the team in rushing, and that's unusual, obviously, to have a quarterback that does both. You know, very similar. We had Terrell Hunt earlier at Syracuse. I think he's a better all-around quarterback in terms of throwing the football and runner. You know, long, tall, athletic receivers, 6'3", 6'4". Ryan Switzer is a Wes Welker type in the slot. You know, Robbie Toma with a little bit more speed, very savvy, gets open, catches the football extremely well. And, you know, really 2 and 3 running backs that they can use. So very good offense. They're going to be a very good challenge for us. The tempo, the size of the receivers, you know, the spread offense, really it's a race for space. You know, they're getting their guys in space, jailbreak screens, all of those things, they'll be on display. Defensively, you know, the first thing you look at is a lot of very good athletes, but more importantly, they take the football away. You know, 12 turnovers this year. They force turnovers. They're a 3- and 4-down defense. They start out of their 4-down package, but can get into a lot of different looks. You know, they do some things similar to Syracuse again. They can be very aggressive. And again, they have some very good young athletes. You can see this team where it's going to be in a couple of years. You know, again, can cause a lot of problems. I think they probably played their best, you know, run defense against Clemson. Really limited what they could do in the running game. And then, you know, they gave up a couple of turnovers that resulted in points against Virginia Tech, or that's a very, very close game. So we're going to have to play well, as we've talked about each and every week. We've got to get better. Offensively, we're going to have to score points because this is going to be, you know, a game where there's going to be points put on the scoreboard, and we've got to hold up our end offensively and take care of the football. With that, I'll open up to questions.
Brian, just curious, over here, sorry. What was the connection like with Everett Golson that you guys went back to him after he decommitted from North Carolina back in the fall of 2010, I think?
Well, we were looking for a quarterback that fit the style of offense that we wanted to run here, and there were very few quarterbacks at that time that fit that profile. And so that was really the connection there. We knew a couple of coaches in the area that had contacted us about him, that were familiar with Notre Dame. We did not have a personal contact with anybody. There was somebody in the school that was looking out for Notre Dame that contacted us, and that's kind of what got us involved there. But after we watched some film and did some evaluation, he clearly fit the kind of quarterback that we were looking for our offense.
Do you think he indirectly has kind of helped open that pipeline for you guys where you've had so many good recruits come from the Carolinas in that area?
I think it's helped. There's no question. I think the tradition of Notre Dame football has been strong in that area from some other players. But I think more than anything else, being in the ACC has also helped, you know, being in the Carolinas, North and South Carolina. I wouldn't just put it on Everett, but it certainly helped. His name, you know, and people know him what he did in that area was fairly prolific as a high school quarterback. Certainly contributed to it.
When football thing has worked out pretty well for him, but when he committed to UNC, he talked to Roy Williams. I mean, has any of those conversations ever come up here? Probably not recently, but when he first got here.
Oh, certainly, yeah. We had to settle him down in his first year when he wasn't playing. You know, he'd be regularly over there playing some basketball, and we'd have to scold him and tell him he couldn't play basketball. And you know, I think that you know, he still has a love for the game, but I think that now has changed because of his focus on being the quarterback here. But no, he in his first year here, he was a handful. He always wanted to go out and play a little basketball.
Coach here in front. I couldn't help but notice the last several games, there's footage of Everett throwing without the laces still. I know that was a big point of emphasis before the season. Have you guys talked about that at all, him kind of reverting back to that habit?
Yeah, we're working on it. I mean, it's a point of conversation. You know, it's a habit that it's hard to break, but you know, during practice, we're on him all the time about getting the laces. It's just, you know, it's just one of those things where he's done it all his life, and he's trying to break it, but you know, sometimes he just grabs it and rips it, and you know, there's the conditions were difficult on Saturday, and some of the errant throws were you know, maybe because of that, because of the conditions, but no, he's not at a point where he always has his fingers on the laces.
And then my other question is, I know it's still early in the week, but have you heard any updates about Kavari and the other guys?
The only thing that I got yesterday was that there was a decision, or decisions were imminent, and that the players would be notified. And so imminent meant to me that, you know, today, tomorrow, something was imminent. But I have not, as I stand in front of you, have been notified by anybody in the university nor any of our players of any decisions regarding the hearings.
Coach, Saturday was a big game, I guess, in a lot of our eyes in terms of Joe Schmidt, whether he could handle physical pounding. How do you feel like he fared in that?
He played well. Yeah, him and Jalen Smith as a tandem played very well. You know, again, I think that it's more than just two linebackers. I think you have to have your run fits up front. I thought that our defensive line did their job, which allowed them to really fill and play downhill. But Joe handled himself very well. We left the game. I can just tell you, in the first couple of years here, you know, it was a hot tub jacuzzi kind of Monday for us. You know, it was a bruising kind of game, and we weren't that kind of football team yesterday. You know, it was you know, a typical day for us, and that includes Joe. So stood up very well to a physical offensive line and a physical football team.
On weeks like this, Brian, where you just got off the high of beating Stanford, you have Florida State coming up. Who among your players do you think does a good job of getting the focus for a team like North Carolina, who could be dangerous?
Yeah, I think we do a lot of things to prevent having somebody stand up and you know, really try to recenter. For example, during last week, we didn't make too much of the emotional part of the Stanford game. We talked more about it's one game. Yeah, it's Stanford, and the fans are going to be excited, and it's going to be a great atmosphere, but in its totality, it's one game and it's one step. So we can't play up, you know, each week, because you just can't do it here at Notre Dame, or you're going to stumble. So I think it's been a mindset that we've tried to cast into our day-to-day preparation. Now, having said that, we have some guys that are pretty smart that will continue to lead, and that are, our typical guys, the Joe Schmitz and the Matthias Farleys, Austin Collinsworth. All those guys have already had their say about, focus and preparation. But I think more than anything else, we kind of lay the foundation that we don't play up. We sink to a level of preparation than rise to a particular opponent.
Ben Council was a guy I think a lot of us anticipated seeing a lot of in the Stanford game. Didn't see maybe as much as him. And with your defense playing so well, you probably don't want to tinker, but what could be his role moving forward? Well,
it would have been. We got him out of 22 and 32 personnel. They went to 11 personnel, which was just fine with us. But if they stayed in 22 and 32 personnel, Ben Council would have been on the field more. He's a big physical, close to the line of scrimmage linebacker for us. We're getting much more spread, and so situationally, he's got to be able to be ready when we need him in those kinds of situations. He's helping us immensely on special teams, and he's a role player for us and playing a significant role when we need him. But we got him out of 32 and 22, which is what they wanted to do. They got into 11, and so it diminished his role a little bit.
Last one for me with Everett. I'm sure, what you talked about him wanting to see the game from a coach's point of view on Sunday. You mentioned that. What's the next step in his evolution, his development?
Consistency in practice, consistency, every day. He's such a creative person, that, we don't want to take away his creativity as a quarterback, but there has to be those fundamentals that we have to drill down and really get to the point where he's got to master some of those things, and he's working on them. But you got a great young player here that has a ton of ability and is very creative, and you don't want to handcuff him, but yet you still have to grow and develop him on some of the fundamentals, and that's what we have to do, and that's what he has to work on.
Brian, you talked Sunday about the production of Cam McDaniel versus promise and potential of Turian and Greg. What has to happen for that promise potential to become production? What's the next step for those two?
A lot of it is learning, and Greg's a freshman. He truly is getting his first sense of competition, and it's going to come for him. There's no question about that. I think Torian's further along. He suffered a bit of a setback with, a quad contusion during the game, which kind of pushed him back a little bit. We're really comfortable with Folston and his development. It's Greg's that we need to continue to move forward. So I think that's what I was kind of referring to, is that Greg just needs more time to develop, and he will, and he'll be an outstanding player for us. It's just, I think everybody wants it to happen right away, and he just needs a little bit more time, and finishing off runs, I think, is probably the biggest thing right now. He wants, and I think I alluded to this maybe last week or one of the conferences that we had, is that, he wants everything to be a big run, and he's got to finish off some runs, and he's working on that.
Was there an example of that in the second quarter? He had a one-on-one with their safety. Looked like he made 4 or 5 moves and finally just lunged into him. Is that the example of he was trying so hard to fake the guy out that he ran out of moves, or?
I would say that that's a pretty good analogy, or a good example, not an analogy, but a good example of what we're referring to, is that in certain instances, he's a physical kid, run the safety over. Stick your foot in the ground and go north and south. And, you know, in high school, he could make that guy miss. You know, that's one heck of a good safety at Stanford. Lower your pads, run through the tackle, get us 4 yards. That's all we were looking for on Saturday. We were looking for 4 yards. And sometimes that's hard, you know, when you're 19 and you're used to getting 40 every time you touch it. So that's just development, and it'll come.
And with Torian, it was just a matter of he was injured a little bit, so he wasn't.
Yeah, he was nicked up a little bit, and so we kind of pulled back a little bit from him participating. He felt much better today, moved around earlier with our training staff. You know, we expect him to be good to go and get back up in the carries on Saturday.
What are you looking for him, though? Where can he make his most improvement?
He is he made 2 outstanding blocks. I know you want me to talk about his ability to go, you know, down the field, and he is a very instinctive runner. He's smooth cutter. But he does a lot of really good things. We ran a boot into the boundary where we hit a comeback route to Chris Brown. On the back side of that, Torian Folston made an incredible block off a blitzing safety. He does little things sometimes that don't show up in the stat sheet that, as coaches, we really appreciate. He's really an accomplished player, and he's less about potential, and he's more in that production as well.
Just the overall running game, I think you're 76, 77 in the country right now. You've had a pretty good balance, but where do you need to be to get to where you want, you know, to be the team you want to be? You know,
statistics are a bit misleading. I mean, you know, we rank ahead of Florida State in rushing per game. You know, and they're the #1 team in the country and won the national championship last year. You know, we rank ahead of Stanford, and you could argue that, you know, Stanford's not rushing the ball very well, but that's what they do. So we want to rush the ball better, but we made a substantial change on the offensive line after 3 games into the season, and we're doing okay. We're going to get better. We're committed to being better at running the football. We haven't said the heck with it. We're just going to pitch it around 70 times. There's a commitment to it. We think we can be better at it. We want to be better at running the football. And I think that's the most important thing at this point. Yeah.
Here in the middle, Brian. Matt Hegarty just made his 5th start on Saturday, going against some pretty good players in there in Perry and Henry Anderson. There were a couple plays that stood out where he got abused a little bit, but I wondered how he graded out over 75 snaps.
You know, it's interesting. We, you know, when we made the move, we were seeing, and I think I probably talked about this, we were seeing a lot more 4 down. You know, when you put a big guy on him, one-on-one, you can expose a center a little bit more. He got beat a couple of times when he had somebody on him. When he's working in combination, he does a nice job for us. What he has to minimize is some of those one-on-one misses, and we had a couple of one-on-one misses where he has to do a better job. We had a snap situation on 3rd down where he snapped the ball before Everett had called for it. Those kinds of mistakes we have to eradicate. What we were most pleased with is that in the 3rd and 4th quarter, he played his best football. And so, you know, I think once we settled into the game and started to get into the flow of the game, he graded out much better. But not to take away, there were some of those big misses that we have to really eradicate from his game.
lot of focus on your holder Saturday, which is uncommon.
Yeah.
I just wonder, I mean, you've got 107 guys on the roster, excluding linemen that would be holders. You have a lot of people from which you could choose as your holder. Who is Hunter Smith, and why is he the guy?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, that special team battery spends so much time together. So much time that Hunter actually moved in, and he was living with Daly. And those guys, Scott Daly is our long snapper. And they developed such a close relationship. They do everything together. And again, you got to understand, although they are certainly part of our football team, they work off a different schedule. And so even though he is a walk-on, if you can find somebody that is committed to that craft and committed to wanting to do the work, and somebody that really takes the time and effort to be with that group, that's a good situation. So we thought and we still believe in Hunter 100%, that he's the right guy for that position. He was put into a situation that was a little bit different for him. And quite frankly, the first snap, if you saw it, was not a very good snap. The second one, Scott wanted to make up for a bad snap and fired that thing at about 100 miles an hour back to him. So part of my conversation was with Scott, like, listen, this is a two-way street here. So to answer your question, you'd like that relationship instead of having a quarterback that's going to be there just for special teams. You'd like somebody there the whole practice, and they're working the whole practice together. So you'd rather have somebody that is specialized in doing it than somebody that's part-time.
And you mentioned after the game, I think you said he's a mature kid.
Yeah.
I mean, when you take a walk-on and throw him into a crucial situation for the University of Notre Dame football program, I would imagine you've got to take that in consideration too, how he can handle the pressure of these moments.
Yeah, and we vetted it out pretty good. I mean, he was with us last year, right? We traveled him the last few games. So we didn't just throw him into it. We've been evaluating him in that situation for some time. We just didn't, say, all right, it's your turn. Go out there. We don't know who you are. So, we gave it great thought, and it wasn't somebody that we just pulled out of thin air. He's been in the program a couple of years.
So what's the verdict on the gloves? Is there a temperature range that he has to wear them? Or?
No, I think it was just a moment of let's just try something different here, and it kind of worked at the time.
Yeah, NBC did a graphic during the game listing both Stanford and Notre Dame players with famous athletes for fathers: Collinsworth, Hanratty, Hunter, Robinson. Is there a common thread that you see in these athletes that you coach that come from, and those dads are not just run-of-the-mill players, they're stars and even Hall of Famers?
Well, I think that all of them have recognized that professional careers are, maybe they're more experiences than careers, and that one day those end, and that sending their son to a university where they can be in an environment where they can grow, mature, get a degree, and be taken care of for the rest of their life, I think that that's what that means more than anything else, that they've seen it and know that going to the NFL or going to Major League Baseball is great, but you got to do something after that. And I think that's why you see him going to Stanford, and that's why I think you see him going to places like Notre Dame.
And just one last thing, having observed Bram Van Gorder reacting to, or at least I think I see him reacting to something on special teams. Does he have what's his role in special teams? Well,
we had a situation where, we certainly do, because we're deciding whether we want to be in a safe situation where we keep our defense on the field, whether we're pulling one off or we're changing the whole unit. And there was some miscommunication as to whether we were going to be in a safe punt situation, which would leave our entire defense except for one on the field. And when that miscommunication did occur, I subsequently had to use a timeout. So that was, and we don't want to use a timeout in that situation.
I'm sorry, I lied. I do have one more question. I was wondering if Everett's had some ball security problems when he becomes a runner and is no longer a passer. I wonder if you put him through some ball protection drills that the running backs go through.
Are you referring to putting him in the wrong way of the? No.
You'll never live that one down, eh?
That would get him. We started that last week. I think he learned, if you remember, on his long run on the draw play, he actually took his top hand and put it over the ball. I think it's just a matter of him understanding how important ball security is, but we'll continue to do that drill.
Thanks.
Brian, over here to your right. Against Stanford, Ty Montgomery had 9 touches for 26 yards. When you're able to do that against a physical team like Stanford with a game-breaking guy like Montgomery, what does that just speak to the overall skill of your defense, basically, that are able to do that in that situation?
Well, I think it speaks to a couple things. One, it was a must. You know, we have some musts, and so that was part of our must. And so then it then becomes enacted within our game plan. It's important to know your opponent and your strengths of your opponent. So I think we enacted the appropriate game plan, and our guys knew where he was. We set some defensive things in motion to attend to that. And then I think we have some players that can certainly challenge him. So I think all those things came together to get that kind of net result.
With Cole Loop, too, on Saturday, with the 2 interceptions, but just in general, the volume increase he's had this year. And in terms of, I know you talk a lot about consistency with him, but is his consistency over those 70 snaps or so where improving to the point where you think it's a good thing?
Well, he was not technically our best corner. That's what kept him from being one of our top 2 corners. What he's improved dramatically on is his technique. So he's been technically a much sounder corner, a much more dedicated corner to his technique, which has made him a better corner as a result. Now, along the way, he's gained a lot of confidence. And I've said this before, especially at that position. First of all, you can't have any kind of memory at that position. You have to let it go quickly. But technique has been probably the #1 thing that he's improved on over the past 6 weeks that's allowed him to grow as a corner.
And just lastly, there's a play on Saturday where Isaac Rochelle bull rushed Andres Pete and just knocked him over. Yes. Basically, how does that stand out on film just compared to the rest of the game that Isaac played?
He is extremely powerful. I think I've alluded to this on a few occasions. One of the more powerful players that I've coached, and he's only going to get better. He's extremely powerful. Now, is he a dynamic pass rusher? No, he is not. But I'm telling you what, he is hard to move, and he allows linebackers to fill. Again, you don't see a ton on the stat line from him, but when you can't move Jones and you can't move Rochelle, you know, the net result is you're going to play pretty good run defense.
Brian, the first practice down at Culver, there was a kid that made an impression on a lot of people who were watching, Tyler Luatua.
Yes.
And you had him in the first snap of the game on Saturday. It was kind of neat to see him there. What was the thought there, and what was his role on Saturday?
He has practiced very well. He has not played fast enough. So we love the way he practices. He's really physical. The transition from practice to game, we got to get him up to speed. It's a little fast for him right now. We love everything about him. We love his demeanor, his toughness. The game's a little fast for him right now. And we're going to keep putting him out there, because when it comes and it clicks, he's a pretty powerful player. He's got soft hands. He's going to be a really nice player for us. It's a little fast for him right now, and he does not meet that. I mean, look, we played him against Stanford. I mean, it's a pretty good defense to go up against, you know, really. But he's got to get up to snuff with it from practice to games, and and it was a big step for him.
Being from California made that area with him?
Yeah, I don't think he doesn't really care. He's that kind of kid. It doesn't matter to him.
I want to ask you about the gloves too. Is there any, Peyton Manning has gone to wearing gloves when he throws a football. Any thought about doing that with Everett?
You know, he had one glove on, his offhand. He just is a kid that needs that feel. Kind of alluded to it a little bit. Anybody that throws without the laces is a guy that needs that feel, and he loses the feel, the tactile feel of the ball. So it's not an option for him.
It's October. In addition to having a busy schedule for yourself, your wife's been busy. You've been fixing dinner.
I have. If you want to eat at 11:30 at night, I'll fix you dinner. It's going to be a late dinner, though. If you want to do Zumba with my wife, you could have been at the stadium last night.
Brian, last Saturday was a terrific Saturday for college football. Obviously, your win was a part of that. But after your game, how much of last Saturday were you able to watch as a spectator, and what were your thoughts as some of the things unfolded?
I watched a little bit. I watched baseball. I get tired of college football, if you can imagine. I just, unless there's some significance, I think the last time I really sat down and watched it was a couple of years ago when I think Kansas State was playing Baylor, and there were some significant games that affected Notre Dame. It's too early in the season to have really any significance for me. So I think I was relaxing. I was watching a baseball game.
Corey Robinson last week, very quiet for the first 3 quarters in terms of receptions, and then all of a sudden came up with 4 big catches in the fourth quarter. Was that because of Stanford was taking something away? Was it design? How did that develop?
It's just, we got into a throw first kind of scenario. So in a throw first scenario, Corey's going to be, a major, contributor in a throw first mentality. So I think that's why you saw him. Where I think our play calling was a run first, play action mentality leading up to that.
Where have you seen him make the most improvement as a receiver this year?
Physicality, releases. Last year there were times he couldn't get off the line of scrimmage. This year he can get off of any kind of coverage rolled up against him. I think he's still learning on some of his read routes, but I think that's probably the biggest jump that he's made is getting off press coverage.
Right here, Coach. A couple years ago, you had 0 experience at the cornerback position, and both Bennett Jackson and Kavari had big seasons, healthy all the way through. This year is almost the opposite with the defensive line. I think everyone had that as maybe the weakest area of the team on paper. How are you able to make that into a strength, like the run defense, without taking away something else from the defense, such as pass defense?
Right. Well, I think, first of all, in developing your program, you can never, leave yourself short in recruiting. And so we worked really hard at making sure that we had enough pieces there, even though sometimes you feel like, you'd like one more guy here or there in a recruiting cycle. It's never just 1 year. It's the 4 or 5 years, together that make that depth happen. And then you have to develop your guys at those positions. So, as it relates to the defensive line, we felt like we had enough guys there that were going to be able to, give us the kind of play necessary. And it was just a matter of giving them the opportunity.
Is it more of a snap count base with the defense? Because a couple of years ago, Lewis and Stefan were taking a good volume of snaps.
Yeah, it's much more down and distance for us. It's first, second, and third down. We probably had, with Tuitt, he was a guy that could play all 3 downs for us. As I mentioned before, Isaac and Jerron, not necessarily guys that would be on the field for all 3 downs. So you've seen our packages. You know, we're nickel, we're dime. You know, we're into more situational substitution, so those guys don't play as many reps.
You were asked last week about the Syracuse game, whether you gave any thought to possibly replacing Golson for a series or so, and you gave a pretty succinct no answer. Just wanted to follow up a little. What is your threshold with a quarterback? Is it based so much on experience? Because you've taken Everett out before. Is it a feel? Is it how much experience he has out there? What's kind of your threshold on when you make that decision?
I don't think I would take Everett out of the game unless he was injured. So I don't think there is a threshold. I mean, I think that we're trying to compare a situation where I had a veteran starter in Tommy Rees who had started games and comparing it to what we have. I have a kid who hasn't taken a snap, really, in Malik Zaire as the next guy in. He doesn't have the experience that Everett has and hasn't experienced the things that he has. So I don't think there is a threshold. I mean, he's playing unless he gets injured, and that's probably the period. End of discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian, to your left here. Two years ago, we talked a lot as the season went on about keeping your guys focused, avoiding the noise was a common term as you guys climbed up the polls. You have a week like last week where there's a lot of shuffling, you're back up in the top 5. Do you have to reinforce that message now that they can't be focused on what they've done, but instead looking ahead to what they're doing?
My sense is no. There are too many guys in here that just want to play. They don't get look. They know that they're ranked, but they're more interested in playing the game than anything else. And then the veterans that we have here have been down this road before. They've been undefeated, and they know what it takes and what you have to put in to beat an opponent when you're at Notre Dame. So I've got a good balance. I've got some veterans that have been through it before, quite a few, that is. And then I've got some young guys that they don't even know they don't know. They just want to play. So it's actually a pretty good mix of guys in that respect.
Is there a lift in enthusiasm throughout the week when you come off of a win like you had against a good opponent in an exciting fashion? Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's a belief, there's some confidence. There's no question that the guys feel like they can win any game they play, but they also are grounded enough to know that they have to play better. And that's all units. So I think there's a good sense that a win like that does a lot of good things for you, but it also keeps them grounded in the sense that they know they can play better.
You mentioned you thought decisions on your 5 guys were imminent.
Yes.
With that in mind, do you have a plan in place to potentially work guys back in this week should you get them back?
I do. Yeah, I do.
How is it realistic that some of them could play this Saturday? Were they to be back to you, say, tomorrow, or is that too soon? Or
I think that there are limited roles that could find themselves come together, but I think it's hypothetical right now because I don't have any information. I was asked this question on our teleconference, and it forced me to kind of give it some thought, so I did, and have put some thoughts together in my mind. I think the overriding thought for me is, 6 weeks is a long time. There's no way that somebody's going to come back in and start on Saturday. We'll see how it plays out. If, in fact, we do have a player back, we'll try to, get them an opportunity to contribute. But it would have to be in a limited role.
Thanks.
Brian, up here, just on Elijah, how much do you think he benefited from essentially the fact that you had to play him with Austin's injury, that then he had some game tape he could look at and really learn in a different way than maybe he would on a Tuesday or Wednesday?
Invaluable. It was invaluable. I mean, we couldn't have developed him to the point that he's at now. Now, having said that, he's got to make that play in two-man when the ball's floating in the air, right? So I think he's still learning. You know, he's still got to make some of those plays. He's great around the line of scrimmage. He's got to get better in space off the hash. But we can't even have those conversations with him unless he has those weeks of experience. So extremely invaluable for him and his development.
Just like big picture, why do you think that is, that, you know, a game experience may be 10 times more valuable than just going over something in a practice?
Well, everything slows down in practice. Even though you try to get it to go fast, it's the ability to register what's going on out there by formation, by tendency. You're communicating. It's live. You're on stage. It's just, you know, the lights are bright there, and so you can't really duplicate that. And so I think that's why you have to have those live reps, because they're not the same.
Just follow a question earlier just about teams coming at you more in 11 than 22 or 23. Like, why do you think that is? Because on paper it seems like your defense is built more to stop a spread than it would be just a straight ahead smash mouth power team.
Well, they weren't able to run it. So, you know, they were averaging less than 2 yards rushing the ball. And so they got into 11. To me, I know that we went into the game wanting to get them out of 22 and 32 personnel, and we achieved that goal. We did not want to play the game in 22 and 32 the whole game, because we knew it was going to be a long day if that was the case. So we feel the same way. If we can get you into 11, then we feel better about it, because we can do a lot more things. But I think more than anything else, we limited what they could do relative to down and distance and got them into third down situations.